Welcome back to Digital Tutors. In this lesson, we are talking about matching action, cutting on action. And matching action is one of the basic concepts of action editing. We kind of talked about it last time a little bit, but we're going to go more in depth here. You're always looking for those points to hide your edits. You're trying to make each edit kind of invisible, for lack of a better term. You don't want your audience to feel the edit, you want the action to bring them through each individual edit. Because as an editor, you're always focused on the story and the psychology. You're trying to get your audience through the story, experience that story, instead of seeing all of the building blocks. A good edit is not one that people say, man, that was really well edited. A good edit is one that people don't notice because they're so lost in the story that you're telling. That's what separates a good edit from a bad edit. And in action, that all comes down to matching action. So let's take a look at what I'm talking about here. We have all of these shots of the exact same thing, right? So we can zoom in here and we decide which ones we want to use. Now, if I cut from this shot to this shot, that's going to be a jump because it's from the exact same frame. So even if we do a good matching action, it's going to be noticeable. It might be dramatically noticeable. Every now and again, you want your audience to feel that jump. And we're going to talk again about jump cuts a little bit down the line here in this lesson, give you some better concrete examples of those instead of just theoretical as we talked about before. But let's just go ahead and cut from this shot to this shot. And I'll show you how to do that. So you can always do it roughly. Just basically go to the point where he's pushing, and you can use one frame at a time. I can cut it right there. I can get rid of this. And what I just did there was ripple delete. So you can right click and ripple delete. I've actually changed my small delete key on my keyboard to be ripple delete because I find it so useful. But you can always right click and ripple delete, or there are other set quick keys. And if quick keys are your thing, which they kind of should be if you're an editor, you can always go and find where your quick keys are by going up to keyboard shortcuts, and it gives you a whole list of what they all are. Or you can always just print off a list online. They're pretty easy to find. Now, you're not going to use every single quick key in the book, but there are certain things that you're going to want to use quick keys for, and that's a good place to find those. Now, we have this first where he pushes away, and we're going to do the same thing here, right where he starts pushing. I'm going to go ahead and cut that right there and ripple delete it. Not too terrible, pretty good. But let me show you how you can actually go in there and fine tune it. This is something that you'll definitely do more and more when you're doing action editing. If I just double click on the edit itself, it goes into this kind of trim tool. Now you can just affect one or the other. I could just take away from this one and not add to the other, or I could add to both. Now what I like to do is once it's close like this, click on the middle so that both windows are active. You can see the blue on the top and the bottom. You want both windows to be active, and then you can go to one side and drag it to the right or to the left. If you press space, it loops us through. That's really close. So I'm just going to go ahead and screw it up. We'll go right here. So you notice because I had the right selected, it only affected the right. And so that doesn't work so well. So let's go ahead and double click on it. Now we can actually fix it. So what we want to do is watch here. This is the last frame of the shot on the left. This is the first frame of the shot on the right. So we can try to really get those to match. Again, we'll just go right where he pushes. And then over here, I will take it right to where he pushes. And we can watch that. I feel like I could use a little bit less on this one. So you're really just looking for that visual cut on the action. And you notice that even though you're going from this shot to the other shot, it becomes a lot less noticeable because we are matching our action and we are cutting on this matched action. So when you have matched action, like in a fiction fight scene, it's really pretty easy concept to understand and to go through. So I have a bunch of these different ones here that you could also do that with. That one where he punches and he punches and he punches. So feel free to go through and actually make those line up, figure out how that transition is going to work. I just gave you some options here, or you can just wait to do this when you actually have an edit. Either way, I just wanted to give you those options. Now, when we go into our documentary footage, it's slightly different because we don't really have matching action all the time. Now, in between these two shots, we do, but that's going to be a little bit of a jump cut. So feel free to try to cut on action. And what I mean by cutting on action is even if the action isn't matched, you can cut on the action and it will help hide the cut. So let's go from like this one where she starts throwing a punch out, cut that, to where she's throwing a punch out here. And again, even though this is going to be a bit of a jump cut, we can kind of get a sense of how cutting on the action helps to hide the cut. What you don't want to do is have somebody stop moving and then cut. So for example, this, where she stops and then cut to this next one, that feels like much more of a cut than the previous, because she's stopped, and so the movement isn't bringing us through the action. So when possible, cut on movement, cut on action. Now, the last thing that we want to talk about is, I have other versions of the same thing of cutting on action. In this case, it's these weird, ridiculous point of view shots that you would do that same thing for. The other thing that we want to talk about is jump cuts, and really good examples of a jump cut in this fiction scene, because we already kind of talked about it in the documentary footage scene. So if you look here, we have this shot where he jumps up and then it cuts to this angle. That is not exactly a jump cut because we are moving angles. So we've moved from this perfect profile to kind of a 3/4 profile. We're also changing framing. So we move from this extreme long shot to this kind of over the shoulder long shot. The composition on this isn't perfect. This guy should actually be right about here, but that's just me nitpicking as a shooter as well. And then you see that we jump to this side. Now that's where our jump cut comes, because you see here and here, green shirt is on screen left. Blue shirt is on screen right. The next shot, green shirt is on screen left, blue shirt is on screen right. Then when we jump here, we've flipped the world. Blue shirt's now on the left and green shirt is now on the right. So even if we go through here and we do this cut really well, let's go right there, go ahead and cut that, go right here, get rid of that. Even if we do something like that, which is a pretty good cut. And if you can't get cuts that perfect to start off with, don't feel too bad. I've been doing this for a while, so usually my first guess is within a couple of frames. That's not bragging. That's just something that comes with practice and experience. So you will definitely get there if you're not at that point already. So even though that cut is right, and it's cut on action, and it's matching action, because we jump to the other side of the screen, it feels like a jump. There's nothing we can do to change that. In the case of this story, we kind of need it because it's the only shot we have of this guy jumping off the wall. So psychologically, what we've done is added a cut that people are going to feel. So now what I want you to do is go through, play with all of these little things that I've put together for you. Get used to cutting on action, get used to matching action, and then when you are comfortable with all of that, you can come on back and watch the next lesson.